All right, everybody. Welcome to Drayage Junkies episode 4. Glad to have all of y'all back in here with us, and got a pretty good show set up for you today. If y'all don't know about some oversized, overgauged drayage work, you're about to learn. And Mr. Talmo, we're going to talk about in the news today?
What are we going to talk about in the news today?
Some of that low-hanging fruit, tariffs. We're going to see what's going on after Mr. Trump's announcement on the 8th. But, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, get junky with us, and we'll see y'all here in 22 seconds.
I love that song. Every time I love that song.
It's crazy, man. Paul made that. He said in like 5 minutes.
I love it.
It's awesome. But how you doing, brother? It's been a while. I'm
doing good.
I missed last week.
Yeah, we missed you last week, man. Rob did a good time. Good job holding down the fort. But I've definitely learned that I am better the co-host than I am the main host, and I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you being back.
Mm-hmm.
Last week was interesting. With a lot of the tariff things are scaring people, and they're making a lot of last minute jerks and changes. So it made for an interesting week. But I'm glad to be here. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, man.
How was your week?
It was good. Oregon was a wild time. I say wild time. We went up there for 2 days, visited with some customers, checked on some trucks and whatnot, and got to see the countryside. So yeah, it's good to be back in the saddle, man. And I'm in the same boat as you. You gotta understand, like I'm also a co-host on Logistics Lounge, so this is only my 4th time, like truly being the main host. I guess the 3rd time since I missed last week. So we're learning together, brother. But yeah, it's good to be back, man. Excited for Mr. Mike to be talking with us today. So I guess before we get into that, let's dive into some news. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Talmo was talking about, and have you has seen across all platforms, tariffs have been just a thorn in everybody's side. But announced on April the 9th, Trump's 90-day tariff pause went into effect. Then it has it has split the affected container trade from 250 million to 125 million TEUs. Now, this is sparing 75 countries, but not China, which we've smacked a nice 145% tariff on them. But a baseline 10% tariff persists, and China retaliates with 125% duties. So we'll see how that goes. But the electronics coming over, they are exempt, but furniture and apparel continues to suffer, and freight rates have risen 3% since the 9th, and ports are still facing congestion. I don't think that's news. Ports have always been facing congestion ever since COVID times. I think the East Coast is going to be taking care of that, especially seeing what Charleston and, Savannah and these other ports are growing. But until then, uncertainty looms until post July 8th. So they're saying that trade talks are faltering and the supply chains are continuing to be strained. And Mr. Talmo, I know you had a wild week last week. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of exports that got canceled. They're afraid to put them on the water, right? And but however, I mean, got some really encouraging news from a lot of our customers that they're putting a lot of containers on the water from imports coming in, just because as long as they're as long as they're on the water,
right,
before it goes into effect, they won't be affected by that. So yeah, we got several phone calls last week that just to plan the next 30 days is going to be crazy as all these ships start coming in. We need more ships like the one we're going to talk about today as the vessel of the day. Need more of those out there because it can. There she is. There she
let's
is.
talk about it.
It's the MSC Arena. It is actually the world's largest currently, as of March 2025. It is still listed as the largest cargo vessel that's out there. Holds 24,346 TEUs. It spans 399.99 meters, which about 1,300 feet. Pretty massive ship. It's currently in East Africa, heading to Ashdod, Israel. Currently, right now, traveling at about 20 knots in under engines. So it's a big one. It's a big one for sure. But yeah, we need a lot more of those right now to go into effect to move all these containers around.
Yep. We're gonna need a lot more drayage carriers, or at least let the ports be open 24/7. I think that would just be an excellent idea. Why stop?
Exactly.
Or at least get rid of the lunch breaks, man. I know you have enough people out there working. I can go on and on about that, but that is an awesome shit, man.
Yeah, it's huge.
I can't wait till we get down there, man. When we do the Grand East Coast tour.
There we go. Let's do it.
Might see us driving one of them someday. But well, cool beans, man. Well, you ready to get to our guest today?
Yeah, I'm super excited to bring on Mike. We also Michael Murray. We call him OG Mike. That's our nickname. That's not his nickname. Yeah, super excited to bring him on. Let's not hold him up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Murray.
Hey guys,
Mike, how are we doing?
Mike.
Doing well.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's great to have you on today, brother. How's your week been? How have these tariffs been treating you?
It's been a little slow lately. We are lucky that we work all of North America, so we're not stuck on any particular region. But I think tariffs, economy, we're still living in Joe Biden's economy right now. Hopefully, Trump's working on bringing that to an end. And I see good things ahead.
Yeah, it's been a little bumpy, but Trump did say it's going to get worse before it gets better. But just I think it's swinging a little power right now. If we want to do that, we can bring it back to the States. It'll take a minute, but I'm not too upset about it. I like to buy cheap stuff from China, so if it's not here, then I'm saving money.
Well, I think we're looking at three guys here that all know and understand this had to be done. We couldn't keep on going the way that we were. Is it costing us all individually right now? Yeah, it is. But I think the benefits will outweigh the pain that we're going through right now. We've just got to give it a little bit of time.
Right.
Yep, agreed.
Time heals all. But well, cool beans, man. Well, Mike, once again, it is great having you here. And we talked a little bit backstage, and I'm excited to get to know you. I know Steve knows you just a little bit from UCW, but for those that don't know you, who is Mike, and how did you get to where you are today with OOG Project Group?
Well, Mike is the husband of Pam Murray, and he's got a couple of children that are grown and out of the house now. I started out of college. Never had a paycheck in my life. Have always worked in sales, real estate development, construction. I did that up until 2008. And in 2008, took a huge hit. Still had a young family at the time and needed to come up with something else. And I discovered this business called logistics. My first forte into it was working with a drayage carrier, which was really interesting for me. Coming out of a construction environment and sales, it was during, of course, a downturn in the economy. A lot of units moved, a little bit of profit on each one. Didn't really fill my skills that I had developed over the previous 20 years. And I decided that I wanted to get out of the drayage and get into specializing. And the way that I did that is I went out with a couple of buddies and we bought a 10-axle RGN. Are you guys familiar with what a 10-axle RGN is?
Mm-hmm.
We were set up to be able to carry up to 120, 132,000 pounds. It was a beam trailer, so it didn't have a deck to it. We bought the equipment, we hired the driver, and using the relationships that we had, we went out and started getting freight on it. And I learned something really interesting in those first 6-8 months of operating a truck. And that's this. If you can't drive it, you shouldn't own it. I I never had the experience of being a driver. My hat is 100% off to all the drivers that are out there. What a tough job. You shouldn't own the truck unless you can drive it. You got to be able to reach up in the cab, and driver's got to go home after you've got 4 loads ready for him to move and go in a triangle, and he can't move that load. You got to be able to say, okay, I'll get in the truck and I'll take care of it. And I just wasn't in that position. But we built up some relationships. We ended up selling off the truck, and I became an agent at that time. And my specialty, of course, was oversized and out of gauge. The difference with oversized and out of gauge is we might move 2,000 units a year versus moving to make the same amount of margin and the same amount of money, just simply because they're more expensive loads. You might need to be able to move 6,000 to 8,000 in drayage, for example. So I decided to specialize in that, and in doing so, been doing it a long time now. We've moved stuff from 420,000 pounds to 31 feet wide to 17.8 tall, all over the country and in Canada and in Mexico. It's been quite an experience, and I'll tell you, the one thing about oversized and out of gauge, life is never boring. You are not sitting there moving individual units that are exactly the same every single time with the time constraints that are on them. I think what's valued in our job is that, number one, our knowledge. We had a bid today where we were supposed to go ahead and move something that was 16.3 wide, and had the owner call me back and say, "Hey, you have my number yet? Or do you have that number yet?" And it's like, it's not quite that easy to come up with a number on 16.3 wide. And of course, we communicated to them that it'll take us 3 or 4 days to get that rated out. We do everything. We do a lot of project work too, which involves moving containers. It involves moving the project cargo that's either coming in on flat rack or in open tops or in containers. Based off the size of that, we'll either have it stripped at port, we'll pull it out of port and dray it to a warehouse and strip it there. Many times there are those occasions that you can actually go ahead and ship it on the flat rack or inside the open top, and we can kind of get into that a little bit later in the interview. But my life is not boring. It's different every single day. I love the challenge of dealing with the oversized. You got to have the knowledge. You've got to have good carrier partners, and that's what we have all over the country, is good carrier partners, people we depend on, they depend on us. You got to give timely pricing. You've got to be able to get those numbers out. And the biggest things that I think that really makes us different is you've got to provide service and you've got to provide communication. If you've got $1 million piece moving down the road, you can imagine the pucker factor for the people that are shipping it on each end, and they need constant communication. It doesn't do good to give them a check call in the morning. They need to know what's going on with their load. They need to know what you've planned out. They need to know how you're handling it. And I'm a big believer, if there's a problem, man, I need 2 minutes to think about it, but after I think about it for 2 minutes, I've got to call and tell that customer there's a problem. In oversized, problems don't go away. You've got to fix them. You've got to adapt and overcome and make it happen. And it's a really, really interesting job. And I wish I would have discovered it before I went into real estate and construction.
Mike, what is the most interesting thing? I mean, I'm obviously, there's several things that are probably different weights, different sizes, different whatever cost. But what is the most interesting, if you could put your hands on one shipment that you think about all the time? What would it be?
Everyone's different. That's the biggest thing that I can say is everyone's different. When I look at I get a request, and let's say it's going from Norfolk to Wisconsin. Let's say we get a fair number of those types of loads. and you look at the dims and you look at the weights, and you've got to figure out what that's going on. You've got to figure out the best. You're always reinventing the mousetrap. You're always coming up with a new solution to how to get that moved and get it adapted. It's not just I need to win the work. I need to go ahead and get the DO, and then I need to get everything scheduled. I need to communicate with everybody. It's just not that simple. Depending on the size of the units, you can be talking about just a simple permit in a single state. You can be talking about permitting in multiple states. It is always different, every single load, and you have to adapt that. And here's the biggest thing, by God, you secure that cargo onto that deck. I mean, this is, let's say you have an 80,000 pound piece, that thing will crush a school bus. You've got to communicate with the drivers. You've got to know your drivers. Your drivers have to be experienced. How are they going to secure that cargo? Are you going to go ahead and get pictures of it? Are you going to review those before you go ahead and let that load leave the port or leave that warehouse? My God, you got to be careful with this stuff. It's not just plug and play. You've got to be on it all the time, because you forget to do one thing and you can take out a school bus of kids. And we take that very seriously to make sure that we're doing our best to achieve that safety of the cargo and the safety of the public. Anyways, I digress a little bit. Everyone's different, and that's what I love about this job.
Yeah, when you sorry, go ahead, Hunter.
Oh, you can go and make your point. I got a question following up.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you bring up a good point, right? Because what was it, just a month ago? Was it about a month ago in the news? We had that one big, what was it, a big pipe or whatever it was actually being escorted, and it got caught up on the tracks, on the railroad tracks, and the train ended up hitting it and ended up overturning. The train ended up overturning. So, I mean, you're right. I mean, that could happen with a regular, not even necessarily out of gauge, shipment, but definitely in a case like that. I mean, when you're moving stuff like this, the safety of everybody in the small towns, when you're crossing railroad tracks to the school buses that you're passing down the road. I mean, there's so much to it.
Absolutely.
It is a lot of fun. One thing that I'm not sure your audience knows is that every state is different. What's oversized and out of gauge? Could you guys know the direct answer to that? Very specific.
I thought I did until I talked to you about my concern that I had about a month ago, and you educated me on this. So I don't think a lot of carriers do. I mean, it is state by state is different.
Well, just to give you a brief background, and the reason I want to state this is I don't want people to be afraid of doing oversized work. I think especially in hard times like this, it's important that, if you can get comfortable, if you can hire somebody like me, or you can safely figure out how to do something yourself. I'm going to use an example. Let's say you've got an open top. What's the first thing that happens whenever somebody calls you to do a dray and they tell you it's oversized? What do you guys tell them?
For me, it's one of those, like, you were talking about rates, right? I can quote stuff really, really quick when it's coming in a regular dray. But when you start some of the flat rack stuff that comes in, some of the out of gauge stuff, it takes a minute. And a lot of them we don't touch. A lot of them we pass on, because to your point, there's that pucker factor.
There's that pucker factor, and a lot of people just don't have enough understanding to be able to do it. But let's say somebody calls and says, I got something that's 108 inches tall. It's a 20-foot container. And you're like, okay, so it's 108 inches tall. It's a standard container. It's a legal weight. So I know I can't put it on a chassis because I'm going to have to be over height. I'm going to have to pull an over height permit. But your instant response shouldn't be, we don't handle that. Your instant response should be to call somebody like me, or call a carrier that that handles step deck. And at 108 inches, that's only 5 inches over height. Well, a standard container chassis height is, let's say, 60 inches. Well, you can get down to 42 inches on a step deck. So all of a sudden, that's a legal load. Why wouldn't you call that local carrier that can go ahead and you can pin him into the port? You can go ahead and call him for a quote. You can put your margin on it, and then you can go ahead and say, hey, I've got a third party who can do this for us, and here's the price, and would you like me to do it? They send you a DO, you win the work, they send you a DO, and now you're moving this as a legal load on a step deck versus a chassis. You didn't have to pull any permits or anything else, and I can tell you the margin's going to be better on that than it is going to be on your standard dray. Again, what motivated us is that we've got kind of a small team, and I think we average around $2.5 million per person in production. I can't even calculate how many containers that would be per person, and that you would be up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week trying to manage that. Whereas for us, we mainly work 5 days a week. Anyways, long story short, I don't want people to turn down this type of work. You know, a flat rack, I want to go through a couple of specifications. A step deck normally is 42 inches high, a chassis 60 inches high, a flatbed 60 inches high. An RGN is 24 inches high, but it usually only has 29 feet of length in the well. When you get that cargo and it says that it's X amount high, let's say it's 108 inches again, I'm going to use the same example I used before. It's inside of a container. Well, you have to go ahead and add another 8 inches to that, right? Because that container's floor, 6 to 8 inches, is 6 to 8 inches higher. So you always use 8 inches to add to that. So I just use an example of, you do this, this, and this, and it's 108 inches, and you can throw it on a step deck. Well, now you're 116 inches tall. And go ahead and take 116 inches and add 42 inches to that, and now all of a sudden you're over height, right? You've gone over your 13.6 tall. Legal in all the states is 75 to 80 feet long, 8.5 feet wide, 13.5 feet tall. As long as you can stay under those, you can go ahead and you can move without a permit. If you do go over any of those, then you're going to need to go ahead and add multiples of things. But the main thing being is that you're going to have to be permitted. If you're under 12 wide and you're under 14.5 tall, in most of the states in the United States, you know, excluding a few major markets, like if you're trying to go out to Long Island or someplace like that, that's an easy permit for the carrier to pull. They can go ahead and get that pulled within a 24-hour period. In some states, you can get it pulled. You can get it pulled online, and they'll go ahead and provide you a rate for that. But don't be afraid to go ahead and take these on. What you need to understand, though, is if it becomes a divisible load. Let's say somebody has a flat rack. Let's use Port of Charleston, for example. Somebody's got a flat rack, and they've got cargo sitting on that flat rack, and it's a 40-foot flat rack. Well, I know 40-foot flat rack, and if I'm over, there's 2 feet. So it's 2 feet tall is what that's sitting on the deck. So if I'm, let's say I'm 11 feet, my cargo dimension is actually 11 feet, and I'm going to add 2 feet to that. So now I got a 13-foot tall piece of cargo. 13 feet tall, now I have to put it on a deck of an RGN. A deck of an RGN is 18 to 24 inches. There's some specialized equipment out there called mini decks that can carry stuff at about 12 inches tall. I now know that I'm getting into what's called the divisible load situation. I can't, by carrying it in that container or on that flat rack, I cannot exceed any of those legal dims or weights. So a flat rack, of course, doesn't add anything to width. So even if that thing was 14 feet wide, I could still carry it on the flat rack as long as I can meet the weight and the height specifications. I can move that. And if I'm on a short distance run, let's say 200, 250 miles, by God, I'm gonna throw that thing on an RGN extendable. I'm gonna put a pilot car behind it. I'm gonna drive it up and drive it back, because my cost, I'm gonna use Port of Charleston, for example, my cost to get that piece stripped out at the port, I'm gonna use rough numbers, is probably around $1,300, okay? Now that escort that's going to go back and forth on that is probably going to cost about $500, and the permits, let's say I'm going to North Carolina, is going to be another $50, $75. So that's $575 versus $1,300. Which one am I going to do? Well, my customer is going to want me to go ahead and just take it up there on the container. I don't have to touch the cargo, hence I'm probably not going to damage the cargo in the transload or anything else. So why don't I just go ahead and hire an RGN for that 12-foot wide piece and take it up on the flat rack? And why do the folks that are doing Dray don't pick up the phone and call somebody like me or call a local carrier that they have a good relationship, who is knowledgeable, who is experienced, to go ahead and move that type of cargo and get a quote from them? I think there's a lot of thought that goes into this stuff, but there's some really basic rules. I've covered a few of them right now. Now, once you get into stuff that you're getting overweight or whatever, again, 80,000 pounds being your maximum, you can permit in South Carolina, for example, you can permit up to 100,000. But if you go over 100,000, now that's the combined weight of the truck, the trailer, the container, and all the cargo inside of it. If you're going to go over 100,000 pounds, but if I was trying to take that into Tennessee, well, I can only go up to 80,000 pounds, right? Tennessee calls it a divisible load once you go up over 80,000 pounds, so it's got to be stripped out.
Well, and even North Carolina, your max can only be 90. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And all the states are different. I'm not sure if I did a good job telling everybody that, but each state controls their own freight. Period. You have to permit in each one. You would think it would be standardized. It's not. I've had trips that are going from Baltimore up to Illinois, and you sit there and you draw a straight line, and it's 620 miles, let's say. And in actuality, let's say you're 14 feet wide. In Ohio, you're going to pick up an extra 120, 140 miles traveling at that width. So if you just priced it on a straight line, you're going to have a problem, because your driver is going to take an extra 4 or 5 hours to get through there. They can throw police on these things depending on their size and their width. It's always easiest just to call and check with an experience, check with UCW OOG, check with the local carrier. It's always easy to ask the question. Don't turn down the work, because right now this work is critical. Be careful with it whenever you do it. Remember about that, service and communication. That's what people that move oversized cargo demand that you do. You have to communicate. You have to provide great service, and you better have the knowledge, because if you don't have the knowledge, using the situation that you came up with the other day, bridge hits will just destroy a relationship with somebody that you've had for a long, long time. It's not worth taking a risk, but there's calculated risk and there's smart risk. We can manage risk. More money you have on a load, the better you can manage that risk, because you can hire the best people to do it with the most knowledge and the most experience.
So you have to get creative coming in and out of the ports too, because the standard kiosks are set at certain heights and certain. I know, like at Wando, for example, there's only certain lanes that you can go, over height, really, right? The extent the higher ones can only go. So you got to be careful even going in and out of those kiosks to make sure. So, you got your on the road challenges when those guys are running, but you also have the challenges inside the ports as well.
Not only inside the port, but you have challenges with your customer. If your customer's overseas, and I'm going to use this as an example, we had a customer that had scheduled a piece to come into Norfolk. Little did they know, now this piece was 19.5 wide. We were able to permit it, everything else. We had to do a route survey. We had to have police, but we were going to be able to do it. Gate's only 18 feet wide. Hard to get out of port when the gate's only 18 feet wide. We were able to pick up on that. Again, going back to that communication and service, you contact the pickup site, you contact the delivery site, you ask that list of questions, making sure that you've got it all covered, because nobody wants that surprise. Nobody wants to pay for that surprise. That ship we were able to divert to Charleston and of course we were able to pull it out of Wando without any problem.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that go about? Talking about diverting a ship, that can't be just a call in and say, hey, can we have this delivered here instead of its original spot? We all
We
know the
told the
steamship lines are a pain in the side.
Yeah, well, we called the overseas customer and told them what was going on, and they were able to. We don't call the ship, but they were able to. The ship was already going to call on Charleston. They just had to change the delivery order. I don't think that one came off the ship. I think they were able to just pick it up and move it to another location on the ship, and then it delivered in Charleston. But that's what's nice whenever you've got days and days to plan, instead of them saying, hey, the ship's here and lasts 3 days tomorrow. That doesn't work well in oversize.
It's actually rather common. I shouldn't say common, doesn't happen all the time, but there's sometimes when ships get delayed. We just had one the other day that the ship left left the loading country on a certain vessel. It got to a port and they actually took it off that vessel and put it on another one, which was then going to delay the vessel from getting to Charleston by about 9 days. Well, the customer needed that product, or their supply line, their production line was going to shut down. So instead of the port that it was going to before it came here was actually Norfolk. So they redirected it and had it taken off on Norfolk, and they were able to get it picked up from there and taken to the customer quicker than if they waited for the ship to actually arrive here in Charleston. So it's crazy all that stuff you learn as you go along with it.
I asked that because I've definitely asked customers to do that before. It's like, when I was like doing Long Beach, it's like, hey, if you can reroute this like to like Oakland or somewhere else, like we can get it out days earlier. Because you remember when they would have ships out there anchored out like 30 of them at a time, and they'd be sitting there for a month.
Yep.
And then the port congestion fees and trying to get, you can have your cargo in, it's here, it's on the dock, but it's in a secure zone, and we've stacked stuff in front of it. We can't get to it for 20 days.
All right, am I back?
Yeah, you froze for a little while there.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, I guess getting back to like redirecting things, like, have you ever had a piece of equipment hit landfall and the customer wasn't 100% honest with you, so you had to like take it from the port, bring it to a warehouse, and kind of like rework it, or just any off the wall stuff like that happening?
Yeah. I mean, getting good dims and getting good weight is always critical for us. We'll price based off of what's provided. Cargo will be coming. Hopefully we get a drawing, or we get a photograph at least of what we're going to be picking up. The biggest thing that's happened to us is being overhyped or being wider or being heavier, and yes, all of those have happened to us. And all it does is it causes a delay. Our permits are no good. You got a truck order not used because you couldn't, and you don't, in oversized, you don't get just to pay somebody for, here's a $250 truck order not used. They had escorts waiting there. They had permits waiting there. They had police scheduled. All of that costs money. So you do not want to make these mistakes. You want to be really, really critical to make sure that you have good dims and weights. If you have to go out there to the port and make it happen, or hire a surveyor to go out, that's what you do. I'm going to use California as an example. We had one in California. We went to pick it up shipside. I don't remember the details of the cargo, but long story short, they didn't have the customs clearance. And we've been asking for, how you can get the customs clearance, 5 days before it even hits the port. And we had the customs clearance. Well, it got withdrawn. Well, here's the fun out there in Long Beach. You have the cops scheduled. It takes 30 friggin' days to get those cops scheduled. And to have your permit and to have your survey and everything else. You want to talk about a debacle and the customer's upset, all because of a customs issue. So again, you really got to stay on top. It's not like you're just going to leave a container in a port. I mean, we had some in Charleston not that long ago. Somebody else had screwed up, and they were like, "Can you do it tomorrow?" And it's like, I could load it tomorrow and put it on my truck, but I can't leave because it's going to take me 7 days to get this permitted and get my route planned and whatever else, and we were able to go in and help with that. But that saved them $3,500 a day in storage by being able to go in. Now, it sat on our truck, and we charged them some for it sitting on our trailer, but it's a hell of a lot better than paying the port $3,500 a day for that cargo to sit on their flat rack.
Yeah. So that's actually an interesting question. You brought up customs and exams. How does, especially I know in Charleston, I'm not sure if other ports do this as well, but in Charleston, there's one company, there's one carrier that has the contract to be able to move stuff out of the port over to Border Patrol CES for exam. How does that work without a gauge stuff? If something has to go over there for exam.
They do it in port. I've never in Charleston nor Savannah. I've never had to take anything out and get it examined. I have had that happen out on the West Coast, and I think I've had it happen I definitely have had it happen in Houston. Okay. But yeah, regular cargo. I mean, usually they're huge boxes or big pieces of equipment. I don't know how customs. Yeah, I don't know how customs does what they do.
Yeah, customs is crazy. I remember whenever the Port of Vancouver was going on strike, and I had a Canadian customer that had same stuff with Steven, like production on the line, and so they were rerouting through, I think it was like Portland or SeaTac, and brother, they didn't know anything about customs or bonds, and I didn't know anything about customs or bonds, dude. Me and my CEO sat there and read the book, like, to try and figure it out, and it was a nightmare. Talk about like in bond, out of bond, like having a specific warehouse and the trucks, and it was crazy. So I think they say getting your customs license is harder than passing the bar exam, because it's like 3 books and you got to know it front to back.
And if you look at the paperwork that they have to do, they can keep it.
Yeah.
And I have zero interest in that. Maybe AI will take over one day, but
yeah, it's the free lawyer, if anything. I've seen people do that. They'll take documents and run it through AI and say, "What do I need to know?"
So I saw, who was that the other day? Somebody was online talking about, the judge was talking to an AI attorney. Did you guys see that one? The guy didn't hire an attorney. He just asked the AI, and then they came up with something, and the AI was responding to the questions. The judge was not happy.
Wow.
You're losing that human touch right there. We all know what goes on in the courtrooms.
So, and when you guys are picking up that out of gauge stuff from the port, I mean, you're picking up right at vessel, right? For the most part, I mean, you're right down there.
If it's really large, I mean, there's a substantial savings to the customer if you can do what's known as ship-side loading and offloading. I would say 1% of what we do is ship-side loading and loading. It's usually reserved for really big stuff, okay. or it's on a container vessel, and they put it up on the deck, and they've got to get it off first thing. So let's say it loaded over in Antwerp, and they put it right up on top of the deck, and before they can start any other operations, they've got to get it off of that deck. Now, if that thing hits the ground, it's going to go onto a Malfi. They're going to have to move it around. You're talking about being able to save a customer, anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 by going ahead and doing ship side. But it does have a cost. Let's use Long Beach as an example again. If it's ship side loading, you're communicating with the port, and they say, "I want you here at 6 a.m. on Friday." And you get there at 6 a.m. on Friday. Sorry, we couldn't because you didn't communicate. You got to communicate, right? Sorry, it's not going to be till Monday now. Well, that truck's sitting until Monday. And guess what? He's going to get paid for every minute that he's there because we have planned this trip out to the nth degree, and he's going to get paid. But if you're communicating properly, hopefully that doesn't happen. You're communicating well. Oh, nope, ship slipped. We want him here now, Sunday at 3:00. And you can wait and you can get ahead of it. But you can save substantial amounts on ship side loading and offloading, but there is a cost associated with that, especially if you have escorts or police or anything else that are involved in getting that cargo to and from the port.
That must have been an absolute shit show during COVID when those ships were just, I mean, you didn't know when those things were going to come out from just being anchored out there at port. And when you had stuff like that going on, that must have been very interesting.
It was, and it wasn't for lack of effort on our part. You know, we had documented our paper trail, you know, making sure even up to the moment that we were running on time, and just one port employee that didn't communicate, and hence the cost. I don't remember what that cost the customer, but it wasn't pretty. And thank God we had our paper trail. I know drayage lives on the same thing, but in ours, a picture is worth 10,000 words, because we're usually carrying crated cargo, or we're carrying cargo that is uncrated. And the only proof that you have in this world of the condition of that cargo is to take a picture of it while you're still at port. I have the drivers transmit those to us directly. They're not allowed to leave port. If they leave port and don't send us the picture, we have the right to reduce the rate by 25% right off the bat. That's not a great way to start a relationship, by the way. But the pictures are, so I can't tell you how many times pictures have saved myself and the truckers from claims. And, you know, we always have to report damage. If we see anything at port, we don't go anywhere until that damage is acknowledged, that we aren't going to be held responsible for it. There's just a tremendous amount of communications that goes on with the oversized. And again, not making people afraid, because if you're dealing with that open top that's, you know, 4 inches out over the top, or if you're dealing with something that's a little over width on a flat rack, but your weight's fine and everything else, why not move it? If it's going within 200, 250 miles versus stripping it, why not go ahead and do it? And then, of course, you get the super large stuff, which you really probably, you can handle it, but there's a huge learning curve, and it's better to call somebody like us or call a carrier directly. You know, I just feel lucky that we've got so many great carriers around the country that we partner with. It's not our responsibility to keep them busy all the time, but we give them enough work each year to create that partnership with them, to where they treat our car, we treat them well. You know, my job is always to service that. I treat the customers and the carrier, the driver, the same. There is no difference between the two, because if you don't have the driver, you don't have anything. That guy's got skill. If he's moving down the road and he's 16, 17 feet wide, you better have somebody who knows what he's doing. And we really value those relationships.
Speaking of relationships and partnerships, talk to us a little bit about the OOG project / UCW Logistics partnership, right, with Evan and Derek and that team over there. I mean, great people over there. Talk to us a little bit about that partnership.
Great people. We started out. I was an agent with another company, and or I should say, my partner Dom was an agent with another company. We went ahead and were approached by UCW to go ahead and become their first agent. And we said, well, we really don't want to be an agent per se. We really want to be your in-house oversized and out of gauge project group. And the reason why is that this isn't for everybody. I came from a company that let anybody who wanted to go ahead and move oversized and out of gauge. And I found when I walked into these high level meetings with large 3PLs or large customers, that they would go ahead and always have a bad story to tell about the company that I was with. So I spent the first 5 minutes getting yelled at by somebody for something I didn't even do. And then I had to go ahead and regroup and go ahead and say, yeah, here's probably why that happened. Here's how our group operates. Here's how we do things differently. And this is why you should work with us. And that's been successful for us to be able to take that approach with things and just have that level of we have customers now. We're probably their only call, especially when it comes to really hairy stuff, because they know we're going to dot our I's and cross our T's. You know, I can't fix stupid is something I always like to say, but I can sure as heck go ahead and try to head it off at the pass. Hence the pictures of the securement, hence the communication with the drivers, hence getting copies of the permits, hence getting to know who my driver is, who's his escort, did the escort do the survey if a survey is required. There's just a lot of steps that you take to make that happen. UCW wanted that experience. We became their very first agent, but we still operate as a division of UCW. So, we operate under OOG at UCW. So anything that's oversized or out of gauge goes to OOG at UCW.com. And it goes to my partner, Dom, and we get it priced up and we talk about it and we ask questions and we try to return things timely. And it's been a great relationship. UCW has since hired in a lot of other agents that have different specialties, like yourself, that specialize in drayage, and guys that specialize in van, and guys that specialize in expedited, and guys that specialize in LTL. It takes a village, and I think what's really nice is that all of our groups are pretty small. My group consists of basically 5 of us, and out of that 5, we do a pretty good volume of work, but it's always quality over quantity. You just want to be known for doing quality work, and hopefully you can make some margin off of that. And that's kind of our approach to doing things. But yeah, UCW has been a very good company comparatively where I came from originally. It's night and day. It's been a wonderful experience, and I was trying to count how many years ago that was, and I think it's been 13 years.
Wow. Yeah, they're a really good group of people over there, and I did my homework. Clinton and I, my business partner, really did some homework as we were entering into this next chapter. And they what I love about it is exactly how you and I met. Right, you got a question for them, and you reach out to them. If they don't have it, they're going to put you in contact with the person, and that's how you and I met, Mike. Right, I had a question about some overweight flatbed work with some granite moves, and I wasn't 100% certain if I could legally move it the way they wanted it moved. And thankfully, Derek and the team over at UCW put me in contact with you. So I think that's great, man. Having partners in this that not only specialize in what you do, but also have resources to put you in contact with people who specialize in some other stuff. So yeah, I can't say enough about them.
And in return, we send stuff over to you to get priced for drayage. Whenever we have a project, it's drayage isn't really our thing. It's not what we do. We get involved in it, but it's usually as part of a project. And if we can make it an all UCW team, that's great. Makes life a lot easier. I think the one thing that I like to say to your viewers is that please don't be afraid of oversized. Oversized is not as scary as it sounds. Yes, it does take some knowledge. It's just you just got to be careful. You just got to take baby steps, whether it's through a local carrier or contacting us. Don't be afraid of it, because the only way you get this work, the only way any of us get this work, is through our relationships. If you have that business relationship with somebody, he would much rather work through you than do that. And the way I always treat that, whenever I get a referral that comes in and we get an award based off that referral, we kind of take it over at that time and point, but we keep our the person that helped us get the work. We communicate with the customer, we communicate with the delivery, we communicate with the receiving site and the pickup site. It's just, I think people would be impressed on how you handle that. There is a very specific process that we ask multiples of questions all the way through, but we can make you look good. We really can make you look good to your customer, because it's a problem for them. It's not something they deal with every single day either, and they're not exactly sure how to get started on it. We're a good resource. Again, there's plenty of resources out there. I'm not going to just ring our tune. All I ask is, don't be afraid of this type of work. It's really interesting. If you want to get out of your monotony for a day, do some oversize.
I love that. Don't be afraid, everybody.
Don't be afraid.
And
Persevere.
Questions. Communicate.
quality over quantity. Well, I do want to ask,
Quality
man,
over
so what,
quantity.
how does it go? Like, because I've tried to get an oversized, like whether it just be straight OTR, and then like I can't even imagine with the port work. How does it go? Like being fresh green behind the ears and talking to these carriers, because I mean I know how it goes with talking to drayage carriers, and they can pick out a greenhorn in a crowd of a million, but I can't imagine with these oversized guys. Like that's got to be a hell of a vetting process.
That's a great question. It's a really great question because we do vet the drivers. If we have our team members that we work with, but of course you have to get new team members. And sometimes you got to post something on a board. A lot of questions. Them having knowledge of their truck, and them having knowledge of the permitting, and them having knowledge of their operating hours. And I mean, as you said, we're old hands at it. It's hard to teach somebody to do that. We have a young man that works with us, came out of the Marine Corps. He's been doing this about a year now, and we just sat next to him, and we would whisper questions for him to ask. And that's it. That I never wrote never put on an Excel sheet, how you qualify a driver, but a lot of questions, getting their knowledge, getting their experience. And you either get a good feel. You guys know what I mean. You either get a good feel or you get a bad feel. And if you get a bad feel, don't do it. Please don't do it. He'll do it. He'll do it for what I've got, what I'm offering. Yeah, but what happens? Yeah, but what happens if something happens and you've got no excuse whatsoever? You have no excuse. You should have qualified him. I've had drivers go as far as showing up on the site, and we've all had those disrespectful drivers that don't understand they're in the customer service business. But that doesn't even know how am I supposed to secure this? I've taken loads off the back of their truck before. I mean, the dispatcher sounded great and he gave me a good thing, and then I get this guy and he can barely speak any English and he doesn't know how to do an X bracing with 2 chains to secure a piece of equipment. I take the piece of equipment off him. It cost me some time, it cost me some face, but it didn't cost me a claim.
There you go. Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And a destroyed relationship. And if you're honest with your customers, we all are, they appreciate that. Hey, this guy's not going to get it. I'm sorry. I qualified him. Everything online looked good, but I never got to talk directly to the driver. It's my fault. So again, what's one thing that we do before we give somebody a major load now? We have to talk to the driver. If you're having to communicate with an escort and you can't speak English, there might be a problem.
Very, very big problem.
Mm-hmm. And get permits and anyways, you really, that's the nice. I gotta tell you, I've dealt with a lot of Dray drivers. My hat's off to them. The great part for them is they go do their loads and they get to sleep in their beds most nights.
Most of the time.
But I've also been working with these oversized guys. I mean, they're dedicated. They're out there. I know the van guys do the same thing. But they're usually, you don't start out and say, well, I want to start driving an OOG truck. I mean, nobody's going to let you, for one, because they don't want to go against their insurance for your learning curve. These guys are usually older, more mature, good communicators. One of my biggest fears over the next 5-10 years is my average driver age is probably 60. I mean, I don't know who's going to replace these guys. Their knowledge level that they have and how to do things safely, and their constraint. A young guy would just be, let's go give it a try. We don't want a guy that says, well, we'll give it a try. That's not what we want. We want somebody who confidently can move that wide piece of cargo, that tall piece of cargo, that heavy piece of cargo down the road. And to ask you what qualifies, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to figure out when I'm talking to a driver and communicate with them. Those are the things I look for through asking a multitude of questions.
I love that, and that's why you're still here today, Mike, doing the damn thing.
we try, but as I said, there's been some stupid people that have really tried to take us out here and there. I can't fix stupid, but I sure can go ahead and try to alleviate it. That's something we all have to contend with. But I got to say, the heavy haul drivers I work with, they're just the best. They really are. It's a much different category than other drivers. And again, maybe it's because they're older and wiser and more experienced. I don't know. But they always amaze me, and I have great respect for them.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, we're getting close to the hour point, man. This has been an amazing conversation. I think Steve can double down on this, but I think this might call for a round two. To have you back on the show sometime, man. Maybe get one of your drivers on. I'd love to talk to one of your drivers and hear it from their standpoint as well.
I've got some great drivers. I can think of one Wade out of Texas I think would be just perfect. He drives those special trucks I told you about, mini deck extendables, and he has carried some wild loads, but he's exactly that guy I was telling you about for oversized drivers. He's in his 60s. He owns 3 or 4 trucks. They focus on quality of load. They carry some crazy stuff. You should see some of the stuff he carries.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Well, Mike, do you have any exiting questions, comments, concerns, plugs? Where can people find you before we chop on out of here?
Any time that anybody wants some help with the load, wants to get numbers on it, wants to work with our team, OOG at UCWLogistics.com, OOG at UCWLogistics.com. They come straight to me, or they can go to Mike at OOG Project Group, Mike at OOGProjectGroup.com. And even if you send an email and I see it and you say, I don't know where to start, could you please call me? I'll be happy to call you and talk through it with you. We're here to help. We're here to serve, and we're very blessed to have the opportunities we have. And I've put together a great team to help serve others. And I hope that we'll be given that opportunity. And I thank you guys today. This has been very informative for me. I'm an old dinosaur, and haven't been able to do one of these before.
Well, hey, welcome to it, man. And you are officially a Drayage Junkies, the 4th one to walk this earth, besides Steve and I. So, welcome to the show. But, well, hey, stick around with us, Mike. Before we cut out of here, Steve, do you have any exiting plugs?
No, this is a great show. Mike, I knew from the minute that first conversation I had with you that you'd be able to bring a youth of knowledge here, and definitely appreciate it. Make sure, I know at the beginning of the show we talked a little bit about news. Make sure you check out truckingnewshub.com, and you can actually find UCW Logistics on there as well under the industry news. They have their own news tab down the bottom, and if you actually click on the logistics services tab, you can actually reach ucwlogistics.com down there as well. So you can connect with Mike through there as well. But yeah, just very, very knowledgeable. And like Mike said, right, some of us do get a little scared when we think about some of this out of gauge stuff. So just knowing the answers, knowing what questions to ask, and communicating along the line, it's definitely something I think more carriers can get involved with and move it around, because, to his point, it's the senior guys that are out there right now are eventually going to retire, and we're going to need people to pick up those torches and continue to move it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Got me wanting to go find some of that freight, man. You know me, I like the weird stuff. I like the stuff that nobody else wants to take the time to do. But yeah, Mike, once again, brother, thank you so much for hopping on the show. It has been great, and we'll definitely be in touch after this for round 2. But until then, next week, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Towns Agnew coming on. Same time as always. He's the co-owner of Drayage Insight, a new news source that you can find on truckingnewshub.com. He's spent about 10 years working for Maersk, a couple years with CMG. I think he was a train conductor, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yep.
So That'll be a fun show. Might have to get one of the train horns and one of the funny hats for that one. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Stay junky, and we'll see you next time.